Hey everyone, welcome back. We're tackling a question I've seen popping up everywhere. Should you max out your 401k in 2025?
It's a question with no easy answers, right?
Definitely not. And that's why we're diving into some awesome articles today from 24/7 Wall Street, US News, and NerdWallet. So let's see what they have to say about this.
Sounds like a plan. Hopefully we can help everyone listening figure out what's best for their own situation.
That's the goal. Now, we both know this stuff backward and forward, but just in case anyone out there is thinking, wait, hold on, 401k, what is that? Let's do like a super fast recap.
Yeah, good idea. The SparkNotes version is it's a retirement savings plan offered by your employer.
And you put in pre-tax money.
Right, which means you could be paying less in taxes now, and then that money, it grows tax deferred.
Until you retire.
Exactly.
And that whole tax deferred growth thing is where the magic happens.
Totally. It's like compound interest. That's where the real power is.
I love how one of the articles put it. Imagine you invest $1,000 today and you get a steady 7% return.
In 30 years, without adding another dime, you could have over $7,000.
That puts things in perspective. Okay, so 2025, the contribution limit is $23,500.
Plus an extra catch-up contribution if you're 50 or older.
Which is another $7,500.
Okay.
Now, one thing that I always hear is about employer matching.
Like it's free money.
Yeah. So is it really that simple?
Well, the U.S. News article, they actually pointed out this thing called vesting schedules.
Vesting schedules?
Yeah, so basically there's a timeline that determines when you actually fully own those contributions from your employer.
Oh, interesting.
And it can be different for everyone, right? Some companies, it could be 3 years, some it could be 6 years.
So you could switch jobs too soon and not get all that so-called free money.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a good thing to remember. Okay, let's talk about another thing that always trips me up. Traditional versus Roth 401k.
They can get confusing.
Yeah, I can never keep them straight.
So with a traditional 401k, you get that tax break right away. So your contributions reduce how much income you pay taxes on right now.
But then in retirement.
That's when you'll pay taxes on those withdrawals.
And Roth is the flip side.
Yep. You put in money that you've already paid taxes on.
So no upfront deduction.
But those qualified withdrawals in retirement, those are tax-free.
Okay. I think I'm starting to get it, but is one better than the other?
There's no one right answer, unfortunately.
Yeah, yours.
It all comes down to your income, your tax bracket. Like, are you going to be in a higher tax bracket in retirement?
Okay, so lots to think about. Now, what really caught my eye in these articles was they're saying maybe maxing out your 401k isn't always the best move.
Right. It's like this golden rule everyone throws around, but these articles are actually pushing back on that.
And one of the big things they all mentioned was high-interest debt.
Yeah. If you're trying to save for retirement, but you're drowning in credit card debt, it's like you're trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're losing more than you're gaining
Right.
with all those high interest rates.
Right. So it might be better to pay that down first before you even think about maxing out.
Okay. Solid advice. What else did they say?
A strong emergency fund is crucial, too.
Right. Everyone needs that safety net.
You don't want to have to tap into your retirement savings early if something unexpected comes up, because then you have to pay taxes and penalties.
Yeah, no one wants to deal with that. How much should people be aiming for in their emergency fund?
They recommended 6 months of living expenses in a separate account.
That makes sense. All right, so high interest debt, emergency fund, what else? Is there anything else that would make maxing out maybe not the smartest move?
Well, the NerdWallet article had this really interesting point about what they called the future tax bomb.
The future tax bomb. That sounds scary.
Well, it's not as dramatic as it sounds, but
Right.
basically it boils down to this. With a traditional 401k, you are deferring those taxes, not getting rid of them completely.
Right.
So when you hit 73, you have to start taking those minimum distributions.
They call them RMDs, right?
Yeah. And those distributions, those could bump you into a higher tax bracket when you're retired. So a bigger chunk of your savings ends up going to the government.
So there's more to it than just save, save, save.
Right. It's more nuanced than that. Understanding the tax implications down the road is really important.
Okay, so we got high interest debt, emergency fund, and this future tax bomb thing. What if someone's listening and they're just thinking, I'm totally lost?
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, but that's what we're here for.
Exactly, to break it all down.
And one thing that's important to remember, it's not about scaring anyone. It's about giving you the information so you can make the right call for your situation. Because sometimes it actually makes more sense to not max out your 401k.
I think a lot of people just assume it's always the best move no matter what.
Yeah, that's a myth we need to bust for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so we've got those 401k basics down, and we've even busted a few myths about maxing out. But now what? How does someone actually use this information to make a decision?
It's one thing to talk about it in theory, right? But then there's real life.
Exactly. And these articles, they did a great job of bringing it back down to earth, especially the one from U.S. News.
Oh, yeah. What did they say?
They talked about this idea of balancing your 401k contributions with other things, like other goals you might have.
Which makes sense, especially when you're younger.
Right. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Student loans, maybe saving for a house, maybe you want to travel. There's just a lot going
So
on.
what to juggle?
Seriously.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we get stuck in this mindset of it's all or nothing. Like we have to max out our 401k or we're failing.
Yeah, and that can be so overwhelming.
For sure. But what if instead of thinking about it like this big, huge thing,
Right.
we just focus on making progress little by little?
That's a much more sustainable approach. It's a marathon.
Exactly. Not a sprint.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that people can actually start to find that balance? Like what really stood out to you from the articles?
Paying down high-interest debt first is huge. If you've got credit card debt with those crazy interest rates, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
Like that leaky bucket.
Totally. But it's not just about the numbers either.
What do you mean?
The articles talked about how getting rid of that debt, it's like a mental thing too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like it can give you a sense of control, like you're making progress and actually getting somewhere.
I could see that.
Mhm.
So it's not just about being smart financially. It's about that peace of mind.
Exactly. And speaking of peace of mind, that emergency fund.
Can't forget that.
Seriously, you need to know you can handle those unexpected expenses without having to raid your retirement savings.
Because no one wants to pay those penalties, right?
Yeah, no. So yeah, having those 6 months of living expenses stashed away, that's a game changer.
For sure. But what if someone's listening and they're like, okay, I get it, but I can't possibly max out my 401k and do all these other things?
Well, one of the articles had a suggestion for that, and it was actually really simple. They said just start small.
With your 401k contributions.
Yeah. Even if you can't hit that max limit right now, just contribute something. And then as you get more comfortable, increase it little by little.
So even small amounts can make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with compound interest. And the best part, you can do it while you're working on those other things like paying down debt or building your emergency fund.
You don't have to choose one or the other.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance. And while we're talking about balance, what about employer matching? We talked about vesting schedules earlier. But what if you're in a stable job and you know you'll be there for a while? Isn't that when you should max out?
It seems like everyone says to do that. Like it's a no-brainer.
But remember what we were saying about that future tax bomb?
Right. Just because it feels like free money now, it doesn't mean you won't pay for it later.
Yeah. Those taxes in retirement can really sneak up on you. And that's where the Roth options can come in handy.
Okay, so remind me how those Roth 401ks and Roth IRAs work again.
So it's a little different from the traditional ones. You put in money you've already paid taxes on.
So no tax deduction right now.
Right. But then in retirement, you can take those qualified withdrawals completely tax-free.
Which can be a good strategy if you think you'll be in a higher tax bracket later.
Exactly. But I know, it's a lot to figure out.
There are just so many factors to consider.
Yeah. This might be a good time to mention that talking to a financial advisor can be really helpful.
I was just thinking that.
They can really help you figure out what makes the most sense for you.
Because trying to predict what's going to happen in the future, that's pretty impossible.
It is. But I think that's what makes this whole personal finance thing so interesting.
It's like a puzzle.
Yeah.
You're trying to find the right solution for your own situation.
Yeah. And one thing that really stuck with me from these articles was they were saying how your 401k strategy, it's not just about the numbers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it actually affects your lifestyle too.
In what way?
Well, think about it. If you're maxing out your 401k, that might mean you have to cut back on some things now.
Or maybe pick up a side hustle or something.
Right. It's all about finding that balance between planning for your future and still enjoying your life now.
And I'm guessing that balance is going to change over time, too.
Of course. What works for you at 25 might not work for you at 35 or 45.
So it's not just about the financial side. It's about figuring out what's important to you and making sure your choices align with that.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, well, I think this is a good place to take a break.
We've covered a lot.
We have high interest debt, emergency funds, those Roth options, even how this all ties into your lifestyle.
And in the next part, we're going to wrap things up. So we'll explore even more things to think about to help you make that final decision.
Okay, so we're back. And we've been having this awesome conversation about maxing out your 401k in 2025. We've talked about the good, the bad, and even how it all fits into your life, right?
Totally. We even did a quick Roth refresher, but there's one more thing I think we need to talk about.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Well, it's kind of the elephant in the room whenever we talk about investing for retirement.
Hmm. Are you talking about market volatility?
Bingo! It's like this big question mark hanging over everything.
Because we can make all these plans and have the perfect strategy, but the market,
It does what it wants.
exactly. And that can be kind of scary when you're thinking about your retirement, which is like way down the road.
Right, because we're playing the long game here. So those ups and downs, they're going to happen.
So how do we deal with that? How do we make sure our plans can actually handle those market swings?
Well, one thing that helps is starting early. The more time you have, the better.
Because you have more time to recover if things go south.
Exactly. It gives you more chances to ride out those dips and let compound interest do its thing.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. What else can people do?
Diversification is key. You've probably heard that saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Uh.
Well, that's super important when it comes to investing too. You don't want to bet everything on one company or one industry.
So what should people do instead?
Spread those investments around. Stocks, bonds, even real estate.
So if one area tanks, it doesn't take down your whole portfolio.
Exactly. It helps you manage that risk.
Okay, that's a smart move.
Yeah.
But what about those moments when the market does take a nosedive? Any tips for not freaking out?
It's easy to panic and want to sell everything, right? But remember, the market usually bounces back eventually. It's all about taking that long-term view.
To just ride it out.
Pretty much. And if you're really struggling, that's what financial advisors are for.
Right. Sometimes it helps to have someone to talk you off the ledge.
They can help you build a portfolio that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, and maybe calm your nerves a bit when things get crazy.
Exactly.
Well, I think we've given everyone a lot to think about today.
We've covered so much ground, the basics, the myths, those tricky Roth decisions, even how to handle those market roller coasters.
And hopefully, everyone listening feels a little bit more confident about making those 401k choices.
Even with all the craziness out there, it's all about finding what works for you.
And if you're still not sure,
Do some more research. Talk to a financial advisor. There are tons of resources out there.
absolutely. So keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep those financial dreams alive.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into something else finance related. Until then, happy saving.
See ya.